Well, welcome to this podcast. We're talking about AI in inkjet printing, but I suspect it's going to be a lot more than that. We've got a group here who are a breadth of knowledge beyond just printing, ranging from implementation all the way to thinking about AI, which is useful. We've got Neelima Alluri here from Chain of Thought. We've got Mike Sales from 42T, and we've got Dave Erasmus from our lab.
That's it.
And so what I'm going to do first is get them to introduce themselves. Perhaps you guys can have a bit of a few thoughts about where you fit into AI, what's your business or what you sort of work on, and then we can start getting some questions about where the direction of AI is going.
My name is Neelima Alluri, and I'm the founder of Chain of Thought AI. And my background is in software engineering, and I worked across many complex technical domains, starting from chemical simulation to advanced medical imaging, RF, spectroscopy, and in the industrial inkjet printing with GIS. And over the time, what I've seen across all these environments is how hard it is for the engineering teams to find the right information at the right time. And that's what led me to build Zoto at Chain of Thought AI. And we have also piloted with global inkjet systems, where we have helped their technical support teams in their troubleshooting workflows. So today we'll be talking more about that.
Mike?
I'm Mike Sales. I'm from 42 Technology, which is a consultancy in Cambridge. My background is less about the printing and more about software engineering, and long experience of that. And 42T work with a lot of different industries, and I think that's largely our strength because we can bring technologies from different areas together. So for example, for printing, we have done projects where we've looked at babies' eyes and spotted cataracts. We've done projects where we've looked at silicon chips and spotted faults. Both of those might translate into printing where you're looking for defects on an image. Similarly, we've done projects where we've monitored motors and checked to see if they're about to fall over because of too much vibration or something like that. And again, we could then apply that to printing. We've used our breadth of experience of doing physics and looking at RF technologies, and we've also brought that to printing where we can use it for drying aqueous inks. So I'm head of technology, head of AI at 42 Technology.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm the outlier in the group, having not worked in the print industry, but I've always been fascinated by humans' relationship with tools and technology. And after 10 years of building web startups, I took a year off and lived off-grid in the woods, built my own shepherd's hut, and wrote some guest lectures for UCL about intelligence as a super concept, seeing 10 years ago that this crazy transition, once in a evolutionary opportunity to change the way that intelligence is created, was coming. And now we're here in 2026 where it's actually beginning to affect our workflows. And now our lab helps small businesses to think about how to harness this and to make the most of that in their small businesses, changing the workflows, everything from small queries and prompts into ChatGPT all the way to redesigning business models. And so I'm delighted to be a part of your wonderful group and learn more about how that thinking maps to the print industry.
Fantastic. One thing I wanted to start to explore initially is current experience in actually implementing AI. In other words, implementing it in ways that are used right here today. And maybe we can start with you, Mike, who've got quite a lot of experience in how you use edge AI and how you actually embed a lot of the AI technology and actual implementation within your business for your customers.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that people mean by AI, and although there's a current hype around ChatGPT and things like that, that is only the latest sort of phase of AI. AI has actually been in existence for tens of decades, probably since the 1950s. But then, of course, it was called statistics, it was called machine learning, it was called software algorithms. And from that, we can use the statistics to work out if a motor is about to fall over, like I say, by detecting the vibration. So we're using those technologies to predict faults with machines and therefore make them more reliable, and keep their uptime better, I would say.
And Dave, you've been involved in a lot of different businesses from kind of a higher view perspective, but you've had some recent experience of companies you've been to where they're using AI for a variety of different things?
Well, two things come to mind. At the bleeding edge where we're working with small businesses, the very first thing that we're doing, starting from the grassroots, is trying to help people collect their knowledge bases and value their data, their informal IP, as valuable assets, because there's no way they're going to be able to harness everything that can be harnessed without first and foremost getting that. You're in Cambridge in these data-rich environments that understand that, but not everybody gets that. That first and foremost, without capturing that, it's hard to build anything from there. But at the other end, 2 years ago, I did a project with, in collaboration with Google DeepMind, where we built models that could listen to the sonic landscapes under the water. And so we could listen to the fish making sounds, just like birds make songs in the trees. You can understand about biodiversity by listening to the sounds that the fish make. And I also enjoyed that as a narrow, as you say, there's lots of different things people mean by AI, and it's been going on for a long time. But there's something about the narrow, very specific use case of building a unique model that just listens to the fish sounds. So certainly one size does not fit all. We're talking about many different things here.
It's interesting. Maybe we could use that to listen to people on the shop floor of factories complaining about the machines they're using, and they use AI to work out a better solution.
Probably good.
And Neelima, you've got the same sort of experience. I mean, a lot of your work has been around capturing knowledge and how you use AI technologies to really leverage it to quite a high level. The work you did with us at GIS is a good example, right?
Yeah. So thank you, though. You have raised a very good point about before companies bolt on the AI, they should consider whether they have the data in the right form and in the right place to be able to see the value out of it. So that's where, that's one of the problems that we have identified early on. So most of our work is like making the data accessible for the AI platforms to see the value on that. And our goal, or the goal is mainly throughout the company, wherever we see there is a data and wherever there is if we can get to the point in reducing the time between, oh, there is a problem versus we know what to do next, that is the key focus area. And from my experience so far, that is where we have seen the maximum value being delivered as well, because it sits right in the knowledge workflow, sits right in the line of machine downtime, support responsiveness, and overall customer experience.
So, I mean, just generally, one of the things that always comes up about the use of AI is you capture all this knowledge, you have these AI technologies to use it, and of course that means that you don't need people that used to run around trying to do that. What's your experience in terms of the impact on the number of people need to have to leverage the knowledge and use it?
I think in some of the companies how I would put it as, so once you have these tools in place, you can free up the time of a lot of your resources. Rather than cutting down the team, I think we'll talk in terms of like how much productivity it can add on. So the same time can be used to do more tasks where the creativity or the engineering part comes alive. But cutting down all the repeating tasks. For example, when the support issue comes in, a lot of the time goes in hopping between multiple internal systems and finding out the relevant bits or identifying the connections between the cases that have been already resolved in the past. So using AI on the top of the knowledge enables the teams to cut down that time drastically, so they free up the time for actually solving the customer problems effectively.
Mm. And Mike, I know you use AI a lot for your coding and development, and there's a perspective or a view around how let's call it the older people in software development adopt AI. What's your experience in it?
I think I am the older people in software development. My job writing software has changed completely different from a year ago. So a year ago, my job would be understanding the problem, writing a lot of code, testing it, making sure it's what the customer wants. The bit where I write code is now replaced almost entirely by AI, and it's probably 10 times faster than I would write it, if not more. But my job is not 10 times faster. I can now focus on understanding the problem, making sure it's even better tested. So the job's changed. I think the result is higher quality, more flexible, better targeted at what's needed, but it is a very different job.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that you tend to be able to get a lot more out of what you're doing. Of course, the knock-on impact of that is actually interesting enough. I think AI is supercharging some people, but not necessarily others. I know you've got some thoughts on that. The effect of the social aspect of, what AI is going to do.
Well, it seems that if you can figure out in your work, in your job, the right tool to accelerate things, it puts you in a completely different category to those that are using analog or pre-AI workflows and methodologies. And so it's easy to imagine, isn't it, that a year or two later, 3, we'll see 2 different kind of categories of worker. One who's has mastered the way of collaborating with this machine intelligence in a way that suits them and their workflow, and will probably get hired on that basis and probably be significantly more efficient or have significantly higher quality, however you choose to capture that value. And those that aren't able to do that or have to get trained on how to do that when they arrive at a business. And that could, I don't know what you think, but it could lead to an increasing disparity in the economic climate. We could see an even wider gap than we've had before. Or if managed well within businesses, it could just produce better companies, better products, faster iteration rates and better innovation. But I think that remains to be seen because we're still just...
Well, hopefully it might actually open up completely different job opportunities, right?
True.
So it might be that in fact, it frees up people to do other things, which might be a good thing.
I would say it's a lot easier to use AI if you've had the experience of not using it. So I've had 30 years of designing things, making mistakes, getting things wrong, and therefore it's a lot easier to guide the AI into doing the right thing. And we're giving a lot of thought how the next generation of software engineers, how we actually give them that experience when AI could do a lot of the things and get the experience for itself.
Yeah, I would argue, of course, that what AI allows you to do is to focus on the problem and find solutions faster because you can iterate them more quickly, right? So that we do that a lot where we prototype things much faster than we would normally. And as a result, we come to solutions more rapidly. You still need the people who know how to understand the problem, how to describe the problem. Yep. So I think that's always a really important part of it.
I think AI has definitely accelerated the decision-making process. As I said, doing the rapid prototypes or speeding up the agile workflow. Earlier, it was like we had to go through multiple iterations, which does take a time. That time has been drastically cut down by using AI tools. But then again, we all have to take AI with a pinch of salt. And on the day, not pinch of salt, a lot of salt. And especially for people who are like starting in their careers, who doesn't have the judgment learned through their experience. I think, we need to, that's where the human decision and the experience comes in.
So are we worried about our reliance on AI? I mean, as for a programmer, and I do programming too, it goes down for a couple of hours. And then you suddenly realize how much you rely on it. Is that a concern, the reliance?
There are stories, aren't there, of software engineers sitting around and not being able to do anything because Claude has gone down. Yeah, I think it's a concern. It's similarly when you're in the mountains and you lose your signal on your phone, the people that are not going to get lost are the people that have learnt previously how to use paper maps rather than rely on technology.
Sounds like a good thing though, being in the mountains and losing a signal for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure.
I think there's 2 kinds of dependencies maybe. One is this sort of workflow productivity dependency, and the other is the mental dependency, actually being so, it's hard for us to imagine because we've cultivated our minds and the way we work and think predominantly in a more analog fashion. But for those coming up now, they will, unless they have boundaries which are currently not being required or enforced, they will come up in a codependent fashion. Their intelligence will be merged and codependent with that of the machine intelligence, unless they take significant actions to know how to think and to produce rational thought and productive thought on their own. And so it's that dependency that I'm actually, not for us, and I count myself in the same group, but the next generation that I worry about. How do you create the boundaries to learn how to think properly, such that if you are lost in the mountains, you would have, may not be as efficient, may not be ideal, but how do you wiggle your way out of that situation? And when I lived in the woods in a cabin for a year, I thought I was going off grid. And then in the end, I realized it was an on and off grid experience. And I realized I love what technology in the modern world offers, but there was something to be found in putting the boundary and being away from it for a while. So I do wonder whether young people, maybe in university when you don't have market forces pressurizing you to be as productive as possible, maybe that is ideal time to try to cultivate the sort of analog and biological thinking processes that you can then add to the machine intelligence and become super productive.
Well, it's an interesting analogy being the on-grid and off-grid, and the idea of being, I guess, dependent on AI. There's a lot of discussion around cloud-based AI and localized AI of edge AI. What's your view on that in terms of, I know both of you work in the area of probably more focusing on localized AI than cloud-based AI.
Yeah. So renting about the part where we are renting the intelligence or offloading the intelligence. That's the point, especially when we shift that onto the enterprises, especially the regulated industries or even in the inkjet industrial applications. What we find is more and more the customers are reluctant to put the data onto the external cloud providers, and also having reliance on the external providers. For example, cloud is down or the tokens are run out, you don't want to halt your development actions based on that. So there are other approaches, like in Zoto with Chain of Thought AI, we adopted the approach where we can make use of the local models. That way, the whole infrastructure can be hosted within the company premise itself. So one part, the privacy concerns are taken care of. And the second aspect is also the cost, where by using the local models, you're dramatically reducing the cost. So that could be like one option for the industries who are concerned about data sovereignty and also the cost aspect of implementing AI.
Mike, maybe this is a good opportunity for you to talk about what edge AI is, because I'm not sure the audience necessarily knows what edge AI means particularly.
Yes, so most of the AI that people are familiar with, the chat GPTs and Claude, are running in the cloud, which basically means in a data center in London or somewhere in the US or something like that. So when you ask it a question, your question travels across the internet, gets processed by the data center, and then comes back over the internet. Alternatively, you can host the AI intelligence locally, and that's called edge AI, and it's this side of the cloud. So it's either on your local network or actually on the device. And so, for example, in a printer, you might want to actually put it in the printer. And this is becoming much more possible as chips are developing. So there's quite a lot of initiatives to develop AI chips that can be used locally. So Accelera in Europe, and ARM, Synaptics is one of our partners that we work with, all making chips that can run quite complicated language models even locally. And in addition to the benefits you talk about of keeping your data local and not relying on the cloud, there's also, you know what you've got. If it's on the cloud, it can change from one day to another. You can be held ransom. At the moment, cloud is heavily subsidized. I've heard stories where it's actually really costs the operator about 100 times more than you're paying for your tokens. And at some point, it's going to get a lot more expensive to use the cloud.
Do you think that's becoming a barrier? Because I think it's something that's become quite obvious in recent times, particularly in probably the last month. GitHub have just completely changed their business model in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think it is, where it's become significantly more expensive actually, and there's no way out. which kind of points towards localized AI being probably quite an important thing for the future.
Well, I'm from the generation where you used to own your CDs and your DVDs and things. So I kind of like things local anyway, but I used to have a hi-fi system that relied on the cloud. And then one day the manufacturer of the hi-fi system decided not to support the cloud service, and half of the features of my hi-fi stopped working. And I was furious, and you can't have that in a product. You couldn't have that in a printer, could you, if being held ransom by Anthropic or whoever?
Do you think that's, I guess, also a question for you, is what are the barriers to people just thinking about AI and using it? I mean, what's your experience of your interaction with people when you talk to them about, the aspects of using it and how it affects their business? Are you seeing that there's more of a social pushback because of the concern about how it might affect them?
I think there's individuals and there's institutions, small and large, but have more to do with small institutions, small businesses. I think we're all quite familiar with the kind of various concerns about how AI speaks to us. I did a podcast with a guy called Jamie Bartlett. He's just got a book out in the last couple of months called How to Speak to AI and How Not to, and how the results are different if you use voice versus text and many different variables like that. But if we think about how to use it in small businesses, I think we're all still in a discovery phase. We're still trying to figure out, for most people, unless they've got your lovely services, how to make use of this amazing thing. Can I actually make it efficient for myself? Can I actually prototype something faster? Can I iterate more quickly? I think when you're at that phase, it doesn't really matter too much about the cost of running it, or if you get the rug pulled out from you or whatever, because you haven't become dependent on it yet. I think the problem actually comes where you've been successful with using it. You now can produce things you couldn't used to produce that your clients love, or you produce them in such a speed that you've now reallocated those resources elsewhere. And then if you get hiked, that's when you're in trouble. So I think for the most part, I'm not seeing that we're at that stage yet where the noose has been tied around the neck and being yanked. It might be there and we just haven't realized. This is the first time I'm hearing that maybe the real cost is not 2 or 3 times, but maybe 100 times. That's quite alarming to me. I've got very comfortable with using these generative AI platforms for producing just front end websites. But where I started using it is where the API started to become very easy to plug into multiple different services. It's become quite powerful, actually, even for a consumer level Gen AI platform. And so I guess I'm beginning to get to that place where I'm using it in a meaningful way. And if they pulled the noose around the neck, I would get concerned. And so hearing that there may be ways in the future to have more sovereignty, not just over the data, but of the vehicle in which the data sits, that is quite reassuring to me, because there's nothing that excites me about a world run by the Zuck Musk mafia, but yet we can't be without it at the same time unless we can come up with some kind of, almost need operating system updates to keep us up to speed, because we know the rate of change is so rapid, but yet we want those updates like our laptop. It lives, your new software lives with you locally in your room, but you are connected to the internet in order to get those upgrades. And maybe that's an approach to not feel like we're completely at their beck and call.
Yeah, and I guess there's 2 different levels of where AI fits. One is, we use AI in the business to do our work, let's call it. And our customers get the benefit, but we don't deliver an AI thing to them necessarily. We deliver to them something that was created using AI. And then there's the other side, obviously the embedded AI, where you're actually delivering things to customers with AI in it. Just as a general question is, you seeing that people are asking for AI things, or is it a push? Are they pulling it? You're obviously looking to deploy your product to customers.
Yeah.
Are they looking for the solution and asking for AI, or are they just looking for the solution?
I think it's a mixed question for me. Definitely a lot of push is coming from the AI providers itself, because especially there's a lot of attention around AI and there's a lot of momentum around AI. Having said that, for the customers, the problems where they are, where AI is solving the problems, those problems existed for a long time. reducing the machine downtime, or providing the best customer experience is a goal of like most of the companies, in fact, every single company. So what AI has enabled is only the technology has caught up now. So these long-standing issues can be solved more efficiently using AI. So it's as much as the language is different, the providers are talking in terms of AI, but what customers are seeing is in terms of the value and the solution to the existing problems.
Are you seeing that when you go to an organization, there in fact are two parties? There's the people saying, we'd like to use AI because we might not need to hire so many people. And then there's the ones that are actually going to use it saying, well, if I put AI in here, where do I fit in now?
I think usually we take AI out of the loop and focus more on the solution aspect. In fact, that's what we have seen talking to the customers as well. The focus is always on the problem and how much value they can get out of this solution, whether it is solved by AI or any other technology that is of less relevance both to the customers and to the providers as well.
I know you've got the 4 stages of AI adoption. Maybe that's a good time to talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's a model I found and I thought it was really helpful, just showing that, one, we're not talking about the same kind of AI unless we're clear about it. We may not be talking about the same kind of AI, but also when we say we're adopting it, well, what do you mean by adoption? And, level 1 is kind of just discovering, tinkering, playing around, prompting, often creating meaningless artifacts that make you go, wow, I can't believe it can do that now. And I think we're all in that iterative kind of process of experimenting. The next is actually finding some kind of efficiency with what you've been able to do, some actual productive efficiency. But then, and most organizations aren't really there yet, but then it starts to get into the really interesting part, which I think will come out especially over the next few years, which is, are we able to come up with new solutions, new ideas? So it's not just about reducing parts of the workflow that already existed, but entirely new workflows that maybe have new products and new ideation at the beginning that might not have all been yours, i.e. the humans ideation at the start, based on large amounts of data from our knowledge bases that we fed into it to kind of produce new ideas. And then fourthly is entire new business models and industries that can come out thinking about this through totally different lens to how we've seen the industry that we find ourselves in the past. And I have been quite amazed, if I can say, talking to you guys over lunch about how far into this evolution you are compared to other industries that I talk to. They haven't got to that place where you guys all are, where you're finding that efficiency. And I found it quite remarkable. And, when we're talking about how it can truncate the iteration process, that's the thing I get excited about the most. I don't know if any of you care to share about that, but I found that amazing from an innovation perspective, excited about what's next.
Yeah. Mike, from your perspective, you obviously work with AI tools within your business, and you also look to deploy AI embedded in products.
Where it's appropriate. So
tell us.
So we have customers that want to use AI for AI's sake, and that's never quite right.
So they're sort of saying, we've got a problem.
We want to put a badge.
AI?
Yes,
Right.
exactly. It works so much better if the customer has got a problem and then we work out how to solve it. And it may be AI, it may be machine learning, it may even just be boring statistics or
Simple
algorithms of software. And that's so much better if you're focused on what the problem that you're trying to solve is, whether it's keeping a printer up longer, making a printer easier to use, rather than just starting with the technology.
And in terms of your daily business, you use AI most of the day while you're working, or?
I personally, as a software engineer, use it all the time, but there's a lot of scope for having expert systems in the business and mining all of that data. It's a bit difficult for us as a consultancy because a lot of the data and a lot of the projects belong to our clients, and we can't mine what we've done for one client for another client for obvious reasons. But I think a lot of businesses could do that and would benefit from it immensely.
And do you use it for ideation processes as well?
We're beginning to. I think there's certainly things it will come up with, and it will help steer conversations, but not as much as we could. Yeah.
I had a recent experience where I was on a phone call with a customer, a Teams view, and they were trying to articulate what they wanted. And in the background, I was just getting Claude to create a prototype for me over a 10-minute conversation. I just dragged it across the screen and shared it, said something like this. And so I think, and you probably see this with some of the people you talk to, ideation AI can be a very powerful thing, not just generative AI, but, just be able to visually show people very quickly what something might look like.
What I'm finding it very useful for at the moment is doing a sort of a deep research into a new area. So we have a different customer coming to us with a different problem in a different industry, and it's very useful to be able to get up to speed on what are the right tools, what are the standard procedures to follow, what are the technologies to look at. And it guides a lot of that thinking that otherwise you'd have had to ask somebody else to sort of, can you research this?
Neelima, maybe you should talk about the support use of AI for the support team. It's a very tangible example of how powerful it can be.
So knowledge is the data, or the knowledge is the gold the company owns. So especially in the support systems, in the industrial printing systems, there's a lot of data that lies in the manuals or the previous support cases. And because of the high configuration systems, there's a lot of complexity involved. And most often, it's the same issues that resurface as different problems. And how quickly can we identify a problem to be a recurring problem? So AI helps shorten that. So what we do is collecting all this information, which is dispersed across the various internal systems, and having Bolt AI on the top of that. With that, support engineers can simply come in and ask the questions to find the information quickly rather than hopping through multiple internal systems, or they could guide the customer to a troubleshooting step very quickly, or they could reuse some of the past solutions to arrive at the solution in a shorter span. So here on the surface, it might look like a search tool, but if you think about it, sometimes you can get an answer in 5 minutes, versus if you didn't identify it as a recurring issue, it would take almost 3 days for the whole of the engineering teams to reinvent the wheel. So you're really talking about five minutes versus 3 days of your engineering team's time. So that's the value proposition, and that's the advantage you would get by using AI on the top of the knowledge base.
Yeah, and we take that in a slightly different direction. I don't think if you've got a complicated piece of equipment, people read the manual, especially if the manual's that thick. They're not going to read it from cover to cover, considering all the error cases, all the exceptions. So I think that is something that's ripe for putting into AI. And I have a term for it that I use in the company. I call this AI UI. So making the user interface be empowered with AI, making it clever. So rather than looking up page 723 of the manual to do something, you say to the user interface, maybe through speech, please do this, and it will read the manual for you. It will look at all the problems, and it's just so much easier to use. And I think that really is the future of edge AI in products.
Mick, could I add one more thing to that? I think what you're both talking about in my language is the crystallized knowledge of the business or the product, written down in manuals, often dense, hard to get, needs a UI. And I think I totally couldn't agree more with what you're saying about how useful it is to have a good way to interact with that. But there are, I think, two other kinds of knowledge in the life of a business, especially in the small businesses I work with, that remain fairly uncodified. Well, go to the other end, gaseous knowledge. So we're in conversation, we're being recorded now, so it's different, but most conversations, unrecorded, analog, these words get spoken that carry knowledge that pertains to the culture or the life or potential projects in the business. And they just float off into the air, where never to be captured, never to write notes or to understand them. And part of what I do with small companies is help them to turn that gassy knowledge into liquid knowledge, we call it, by simply recording appropriate conversations where that kind of exchange of knowledge is occurring and everyone consents. Because it's a way of drawing down this knowledge that otherwise is just drifting off and escaping. It doesn't tell you important specification things or answer technical questions, but there's a lot of stuff that lives in the culture, I think, of organizations and groups, especially in small businesses where it all lives inside the directors' heads and everyone's just expected to know it. But the more you can share that and the more you can get your hands on that, even when they're not there in front of you, it helps a lot as well.
Interesting. I would like to add something more onto that. So when we've deployed with Zoto with one of our clients, what we have realized was the CEO was very hands-on, and he delivered a lot of training sessions, and he's one of the founder of the company. So there's a lot of like domain expertise, and there's a lot of information that is buried in those training materials. So what they have done was, other than the typical manuals and the systems integration, they also converted all the transcripts from these meetings, from these training videos, and added on to the system. So what enabled them was, again, all the data, that knowledge that is like easily transferred from one person's head to the rest of the team. And it's almost like a new training program that is created for the rest of the team instantly.
But is that making us lazy? Because I know, for example, we get, there's a plugin for Teams, records everything, works out who says what, nice little summaries. You don't have to think about it, it's there, you sort of file it away. But I guess one of the issues with using AI tools is maybe it's going to make us lazy, our memories lazy over time.
Maybe lazy in that area so that we can focus
on
more
the
on
others.
some other area. Maybe.
So AI's exciting, concerning, or somewhere in between?
All of the above.
Somewhere in between, yeah.
All of the above. I think it's a live social experiment at scale, and I am worried there will be many losers. But as you zoom out over history, if you look at what did the Gutenberg printing press do, I'm sure it all looks very successful for society when you look over a few hundred years. But obviously in the short term, when you look at your neighbors and your colleague that was sitting next to you, there are going to be people that struggle along the way. I guess the main thing that people can do is be engaging with it, like you guys are, like I am with our clients, figuring out, testing, iterating. And I think that's fundamentally what a key attribute to be successful in wiggling through this crazy wild west we're in, is learning how to iterate and experiment, even if that wasn't part of your workflow in the past.
Yeah, it's certainly it is a revolution, obviously. And we've all talked about this already, but it compresses timescales significantly. Something which would take 4, 6, 8 weeks is compressed into days. Some stuff that would take weeks compressed into just an hour now. So that's going to massively increase the pace of things coming out, which can create quite a bit of stress, in companies where some of the people internally are doing that, others are going, oh, hang on, is that going too fast? Do you see that?
Definitely. When we talked about AI creating more roles, I think this is one area where I feel, especially in the software development right now, the pace at which the code is generated has gone 10 times. In the span of like 1 hour, I can generate a whole application, which means that a human had to sit on the top of it and review that code as well. So when the scale of the generation has changed, the scale of the review has also need to be changed as well. So there probably we need to bring it, probably in 10 years time, we will have like more software reviewers than code writers who are sitting, and all the development team would turn into more like an orchestration team where they would do the quality checks and making sure that AI is doing the thing that it's supposed to do.
Now, bringing back to printing, which was kind of one of the titles of the topic, I think the industry knows that in printing there's a massive opportunities, because digital printing, for example, whether it's a label press or printing an unusual object, isn't perfect. There's a lot of imperfections. It's very hard to work out why they're there. but certainly AI has the opportunity to work out that quite quickly. And in fact, self-correct in some ways. I mean, we could probably see printers which have optical systems on it, as we talked about earlier, where they analyze the images on the fly and correcting them. Maybe the temperature of it's gone up, maybe a nozzle's broken, maybe the image content isn't quite the right color because the next image coming through wasn't quite the right way it should be. So we can see a lot of that. Is that the sort of area that you're working in terms of the use of AI for image analysis and correction?
Like I say, we're already using image analysis in other areas. A lot of the work we're doing for our clients is confidential, so we can't talk about that in detail. But I wouldn't say it's coming, I'll say it's already here. I would say image analysis of print output is a reality now. Checking to see if the colours are aligned, checking to see if one of the inks not quite working as the other inks are working.
And you're seeing people from the printing industry come to you to solve problems where AI definitely will be beneficial? Without being, obviously got confidential detail, but just generally, do you see that our industry, the printing industry, being highly interested in it, or just kind of slowly starting to pick it up?
So I think in the printing industry, it's beneficial in a number of different areas. As I mentioned before, the predictive maintenance, making sure the printer's working out whether the printer's about to fall over or needs a bit of attention before it actually goes wrong. I think that's a big area. I think checking the image quality is happening now. A lot more could be done. So at the moment we're checking the image quality. I think in the future you could actually have the AI checking the image quality and feeding it back to the settings of the printer, and controlling the way the printer works in a lot more automated way. And as we also mentioned, I think making the printer easier to use for the operators, instilling the knowledge of the experts that have been printing for 10 years or 20 years at a company into the AI to make it easier for them to do things that they've been doing, but also easier for their colleagues to step in on the night shift.
Certainly one of those things in the inkjet industry, it seems to have been a colour management's a black art. The science behind it actually isn't that complicated, but it's seen as a black art. There's a lot of things actually in printing which have seen to be specialised operators about to do things. So I certainly think there's a great opportunity for the AI technology to make, from an operator's perspective, things a lot easier in terms of working out how to do things, displaying things in ways which are much more attuned to the way they might want to work. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a future where most of that's embedded in the machine itself. I remember there was a video that Apple put out, I don't know if you've seen it, from many years ago, where he walks into the room, he has a dialogue with the computer. Before any of this was invented, actually, before any of the technology was there. And so maybe the future is where actually AI disappears again. It bobs its head up now, and maybe it just becomes the fabric of everything. I'm sure it's a reasonable way off. Then maybe it just becomes the fabric behind things which we just take for granted. And it's almost somewhat transparent. Edge AI could be a bit like that, right?
My colleague pointed out that in Star Trek, nobody writes code. The machines only have a few buttons. They're really easy to use, and they can go at warp speed because it's all computer, do this.
That's how we get to space.
Yes.
AI, it's got to be the way to go, that's for sure.
I'm truly intrigued, if I may, about how big you think this change is that we're embarking on here. We have some symbols in caves that we left for the next tribe. Gutenberg came along in the Middle Ages and transformed the sharing of stories at scale. When we're thinking about AI 5, 10 years, 20 years, maybe 10 years from now, do you think it's just another small step in the digital landscape evolving, and it's just another step in efficiency, but just it'll almost be forgotten? Or do you see that this could be like a Gutenberg or something as fundamental in our overall story?
I think it's going to be a fundamental step in history, personally. I know you go back in time and the machine learning actually stalled a bit in the past, where it started to kick off and then it didn't take off as it could have, just basic machine learning. And now it's kind of back. I think it's now got the momentum where it is a step change. It's a little bit like, cars were all mechanical pretty much. There's no computer built into your car. Your car, you could just throw it apart, most of us, before you put it apart on a weekend and put it back together again. There's no way I could pull my car apart now. The technology that's in there I just take for granted. Doesn't always work perfectly, by the way, but generally there's a lot of sophisticated technologies in cars, and there was a step change in that, in how the cars move. I think without doubt AI is going to be a step change in the way we think and what we do, but I also think that maybe it'll become transparent a bit like that too. There's a lot of things we take for granted. Now we've got mobile phones we walk around with. Magic box. How does it do that, So certainly it should end up being probably in the background, very clever, but in the background. But I think that it's going to be a bit of time between that. So what do you see as, a lot of people struggle to get started in AI. They poke around, and I know from my perspective with our customer base, not many of them know how to use it, know if they want it. There's no barrier. I don't think they're that concerned about it. That we deliver them with an AI product embedded, or we used AI to get there. But a lot of them just don't know how to get going. What would your advice be on maybe the first step they should take? Who do you call? Ghostbusters? AI busters? I don't know. Because there's so many people involved, and we're all different backgrounds. And in fact, you can't just, it's the strangest thing, you can't go to AI and say, who's the best AI expert for me? It actually won't come back with people like that. So sometimes I think people find it hard to find the people they need.
Right. I would say for the company who are starting on their AI journey, start small, take a painful problem that is repetitive enough in nature, where we could see the business value clearly. That means, can we measure the outcomes if you're taking this step? So and also make the solution such that we should be able to implement it, but not turn it into an AI transformation for the company, which is never ending. Start small. And there are a lot of tools, as you know, currently available, ChatGPT, Claude, or try with the experiment with the different providers. And in the enterprise setups, try with the small solutions, or there are obviously people like us who provide the AI solutions in this space, where we offer the tech support, AI for the tech support solutions, where we can dramatically reduce the mission downtime and make the knowledge accessible. So speak to the consultants and speak to the industry experts. Simon himself is like a big, has been doing a lot in terms of AI, in terms of developing the prototypes, how different companies are approaching the usage of AI within their industry. You can learn from their experiments.
Mm-hmm. And of course, your company, to you.
I'm a consultancy, so I'm going to say,
come to you,
come to us. But seriously,
but seriously, I mean, your business is a Cambridge-based business. It's well known. You've got a really strong team, right? Very strong team, and a background across many different industries, right?
I like to think we can step back, because we're not involved in the day-to-day, must print this, must sort that out, must get some money from a client kind of thing. We can sort of step back and look at the bigger picture. So I would say, if you're starting a journey, know what you're trying to achieve, and what success looks like. Is it having the printer working better? Is it saving money? Whatever. And step back and speak to somebody that's done it, maybe us, maybe somebody else, and get advice and go from there, really.
And I'm really interested in what you spoke about in terms of, you've got knowledge that sits in ones and noughts, and you've got knowledge that doesn't sit anywhere at all. Mm-hmm. And I think that's quite an interesting thing, because I hadn't thought about it as deeply as what you've mentioned, because obviously there's a lot of information that in fact is in people's heads. Mm-hmm. We do get a lot of this in our company, where we found over time the people with a lot of knowledge have moved on, and that happens. And when you combine that with, the financial pressures of the world, you're trimming your teams down, you're losing some knowledge. You end up with teams, people that have less knowledge, capturing that. How would you advise people to go about doing that? I mean, obviously come to you, but is there...
No, I mean, it's that organizational memory, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I do think that building a practice so you get comfortable with it, a bit like how we've all got used to doing selfies over time. It's like new and awkward, but on the appropriate conversations, saying, do you mind if I just record this? And finding a way to sort of get into that practice gives you options for later. If you don't do that, you haven't got options later. But I was struck by what you said, and I thought about three thoughts that might be simple, practical takeaways. One is a bit like a wine tasting. You know, I can't always tell exactly what wine I love, but if you give me 3 different ones, I can tell the difference, and I can tell which one. Well, until you give me 5, then I can't tell anything at all. But I think that's actually an excellent way. Go to Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT, run the same prompt and look for the differences. Because I'm thinking about young people and how they develop these critical skills to think and consider what they're seeing. Because it's so easy just to take what you're given at face value. So I think that's a brilliant way to sort of build a nuanced understanding of what you're seeing. But also, I think, you know, Demis Hadissis says, you know, we're getting there with solving problems, the answers, but it's very hard to produce the right problems or the right questions. So I think getting more comfortable with the effort that it takes to produce a question or a prompt, and the quality of learning to labor over the quality of a prompt, the quality of a question, not just thinking of it as like the prelim to the main thing. It's the main event now. We've got all of this access to answers and solutions, but what is the question that's worth asking? I think that's another part. And then the third part, I was thinking as you were speaking was, you know, the Institute of Directors. I was thinking maybe there needs to be a young Institute of Directors where young people learn how to think like a director, because we're going to be more and more asked to be managing these other intelligences if we've got our own employees, like a director has to think. So I wonder if thinking about prompts, wine tasting different models, and thinking like a director or learning how to do that might be some practical takeaways if any younger people are listening to this.
And where shouldn't we use AI? Where shouldn't we be using it, do you think? What concerns you? What would you be concerned about, or you've come across in terms of the danger places for AI?
For me, it's the deepest stuff, the deepest philosophical stuff. You know, I don't believe life is a game. I believe it's a process. We're part of this unfolding process. And I don't know what answer Claude will give you. So I worry about people's fundamental stories and images in their minds about what life is about, religion being replaced with sort of this technological God. We're seeing all kinds of stories of young people taking serious advice and taking serious actions as a result of the advices they're receiving. So I do worry about how we treat it in our personal lives whilst we're trying to figure out the appropriate boundaries, because we don't have I'm addicted to my phone, let alone, you know, AI, and I cannot get away from my screen and the Instagram algorithms, let alone what ChatGPT or my agent that's running around doing things for me might be telling me to do. So I think we just need to put the personal brakes on. But I think business is a brilliant place to be trying to experiment, tinker, and figure out how to make use of it.
Neelima, you were going to say something?
Yes, yeah. So I'll take the same question more from the business's perspective. There's always the balance between the question that need to be asked is the risk versus autonomy, especially in the industrial environments where if the outcome of the AI directly reflects on the machine, changes in the machine behavior, or the outcomes from the end, if outcomes for the end customer, then that need to be a human decision, need to be always involved. For example, when we deployed Zoto in one of the industrial environments, one question raised by, it was working all fine as a tool for the tech support engineers. But one question raised was, now can we give it to the hands of the customers? And we said no. That is because when we talk about the mission...
Or not yet?
We said no. Because there's a lot of context that need to be captured, and all that information is not there in yet. It's the mission environment, the the support that has been provided earlier and the knowledge of the technicians itself, all that acts as a context and which simply cannot be fed into the system. And even if so, this AI, I would think, simply can't, where the implications of the outcomes are not understood by the AI, we cannot put AI as a decision maker.
And Mike, I know you've raised some concerns with your customers about, well, your business of knowledge leakage between the companies you work with.
I think it's very important to give the AI some guardrails and sandboxes. So for example, you were talking about it reading your email. I think it's fine for it to read your email, but is it fine for it to reply to your email? And maybe, certainly for me, the answer is no. I don't want it replying to my email now. Will it be the same in 5 years' time? I'm not sure. But certainly you need to establish boundaries. I also think there's real security IT risks with AI running loose on your computer in a business. We might be more paranoid about this because we've got lots of different client data kept separate, but there is a big problem here. You really need to constrain it.
So it sounds like AI could be exciting if it's used in the right place, used in the business, used in the right way, managed and well thought out, which needs humans, which is great. Because that's the crux, isn't it? Is that on top of all this is people, and the only thing that can decide where AI should be used at this stage is people. I think that's where we all fit in, and it's interesting. This group of people, we've all got different backgrounds, and I know we came in here thinking, well, what can we contribute to this? Well, interestingly enough, each of the threads of social and how things work and practical of how things go and how it affects people in their business and everyday life is, we've got a team of people here who can reflect on all those things. So thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure talking about it. I think we covered a lot of ground, and I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff for our industry, in the printing industry, to take away, and hopefully it'll be a catalyst for them to come and talk to us and take them on that AI journey and see where it goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.